You're not broke because you're lazy. You're not stuck because you're stupid. You're stuck because of what you believe about money. And the wild part, most of those beliefs, you didn't even choose. In today's episode, we're exposing the hidden thoughts that quietly keep people broke, even when they're working hard. If you've ever felt like you're running on a treadmill and somehow still falling behind, this one's for you.
You know, that feeling, right?
Yeah.
You're grinding, putting the hours, trying to do all the responsible things with money. Maybe you pay your bills on time. You're, not racking up crazy debt, trying to set a little bit aside when you can. But somehow, after all that effort, you look at your bank account and it just feels like, like you're stuck. Yeah, like you're just treading water financially. Never quite going under, perhaps, but never really swimming towards anything significant either. And if you've ever found yourself asking, why? Why am I still broke despite trying so hard?
Well, our sources this week, they offer a pretty compelling answer. Maybe slightly uncomfortable even. They suggest the real roadblock isn't always just your income or even how hard you're working. It's what's happening inside your head. Your deep-seated beliefs about money. The core idea really explored across these materials is that your mindset, maybe more than your paycheck, actually shapes your financial reality. We often hear that narrative, don't we? Success is purely about the hustle. Just work harder, more hours, climb that ladder, relent. But the sources, they contrast this with how self-made millionaires often operate. They don't necessarily just outgrind everyone. They approach money and wealth itself very differently. They've maybe consciously, maybe not, rewired their fundamental thinking, moved away from that common programming most of us pick up from society, family, experience, all that. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack these sources, and specifically, we want to pull out 10 common beliefs that the material identifies as key reasons people stay financially stuck, even when they're smart, even when they're hardworking. These concepts, they're often framed within some the sources reference as the Growleap Academy, which seems to be the material's blueprint, maybe, a framework for understanding and changing these very mindsets. We're not just here to list the beliefs. We want to explore the why. Why do they stick? And more importantly, offer that different lens, that new way of thinking. So you can stop just, playing defense with money and actually start playing to win.
Yeah, and what really struck me going through these sources is just how insidious these beliefs can be. They aren't loud choices like deciding, okay, I choose to be bad with money. Not at all. They're quiet. They're often unconscious operating systems just running in the background. The sources describe them almost like they're actively repelling money, sabotaging your best efforts to earn or save or grow wealth. And this happens no matter how hard you're consciously trying on the surface. Because at the end of the day, shifting how you think about money, that fundamentally changes your financial habits. And those habits, well, they're what actually produce the results you see or don't see. It's the difference, really, between always feeling like you're chasing money, always a step behind, versus building a life where money feels more like something you attract, something you manage effectively. Look, this isn't about wishful thinking, not about manifesting wealth out of thin air. It's about real psychology. It's about identifying that internal programming that's limiting you and then actively unlearning it so you can build a foundation for real, tangible financial growth. So if you feel like money is this slippery concept, or that despite your best efforts, it just doesn't seem to stick around, then this deep dive is absolutely for you. Let's get into it.
All right, let's peel back these layers then. 10 beliefs. The sources start with one that feels almost sacred in a way in many cultures. And they call it perhaps the most common, maybe even the most dangerous one.
They do. It's the belief, I just need to work harder.
Yes. The hustle culture anthem. Sounds incredibly noble, doesn't it? Like the ultimate virtue, just put your head down, grind it out, and, everything will eventually fall into place.
And that's exactly why it's so tricky, because, look, hard work is necessary. Let's be clear on that. Mm-hmm. But the brutal truth the sources lay out is that hard work alone, it will not make you wealthy. If that were the case, the people working 70-hour weeks in the most demanding jobs, physically or mentally, they'd be the richest among us. And, well, that's just not the reality for most people, is it? The economy doesn't just reward pure effort, it rewards value. And crucially, it rewards leverage. See, when your main financial strategy is just trading your time for money, you work an hour, you get paid for that hour, you inevitably hit a wall, a hard ceiling. There are only so many hours in a day. right? Only so much physical energy, only so much mental energy you can possibly expend. You might make a decent living doing that, maybe even a good living, but you're fundamentally capped by time.
And the sources contrast this with the self-made wealthy. They aren't necessarily working more hours than everyone else.
Exactly. They're working differently. They're smarter about it. They focus on building systems or creating assets. These are things that work for them, often generating value or income even when they're not actively physically present. Think about it. Someone building a business that can scale, or creating an online product that sells thousands of times without them being there for each sale, or setting up investments that grow over time. They work hard, sure, but they work hard to build the engine. They're not just endlessly rowing the boat themselves.
So the question really shifts. It's not how can I squeeze in another 10 hours this week? It's more strategic. What are those alternative questions the sources suggest asking ourselves?
Yeah, the reframes they offer are really key. They say, stop asking, how can I work harder? And start asking things like, how can I work smarter? How can I get more leverage? Or what system could I start building today? Even a small one that could pay me tomorrow or next year. Or maybe what skill could I develop that isn't directly tied to the number of hours I put in? Something that scales. And the sources also touch on the emotional side of this. It's a trap. So many of us, we tie our sense of self-worth directly to how hard we're working, how busy we seem. We feel guilty if we rest, right? Like we haven't truly earned that downtime unless we're completely exhausted. But the wealthy, or at least how this material describes them, they tend to tie their identity and their worth more to the impact they create, the outcomes they achieve, the sustainable results they build, not just the sheer volume of effort that burns them out. So yes, work hard, but make sure that hard work is building something bigger than just your next paycheck.
That's a really powerful distinction. Okay, let's move on. Belief number 2. This one is, wow. Deeply ingrained culturally, often feels tangled up with morality, with shame even.
Right, the belief, money is the root of all evil.
You hear variations all the time, don't you? Sometimes stated outright, sometimes just implied. Like judging wealthy people, or looking down on the pursuit of profit itself.
And the sources really pinpoint the danger here. It's dangerous because it hides behind that veneer of morality or humility. It's that quiet little voice inside that suggests wanting a lot of money. Oh, that's greedy. Or maybe rich people, they're inherently selfish. Or even if I become wealthy, I'll change. I'll become a bad person. It's not a loud accusation usually. It's more like a shaming whisper. And it can make you subconsciously just push money away. The material is quick to correct the phrase itself, which is often misquoted. The original text is more like, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And that one word, love, it changes everything. Money itself, as the sources really emphasize, is neutral. It's just a tool, a resource, a mirror even. It doesn't define you. It reflects who you already are, and often it amplifies who you already are. Money can be used to manipulate, sure. Or it can be used to empower, it can destroy, or it can build, it can feed ego, or it can feed a whole community. It's the person holding the money who makes the decision about its impact, not the money itself.
So, like you said, it amplifies. If you're struggling financially, but you're a generous person at heart, money just gives you the capacity to be radically generous.
Exactly.
But if you're kind of a jerk without money, well, money might just give you a bigger platform to be a jerk.
That's pretty much it. But if you're carrying around this deep belief that money itself is bad or dirty, you will unconsciously act on that. The sources describe how this might play out. Maybe you undervalue your skills. You don't ask for what you're worth. You might feel really uneasy negotiating a higher salary or charging fair prices if you have a business. You could even subconsciously self-sabotage opportunities that come your way. Because deep down, staying financially pure feels safer somehow, safer than being corrupted by wealth. So you might stay small, stay struggling, and tell yourself you're just being humble. But the material really challenges this idea. It asks, is there anything truly virtuous about limiting your potential positive impact because of a false belief? Money gives you options. It gives your values a budget, so to speak. It gives you reach.
The reframes the sources offer seem really practical here. Instead of letting that old misquoted phrase run your life, you consciously, deliberately tell yourself something different, like, money is a tool. It helps me multiply what matters to me.
Right.
Or maybe money gives me the power to serve, to create, and to choose. Or even just money is good in the hands of good people, and I intend to be one of those people.
Precisely. Look, the world doesn't need fewer ethical, compassionate people with resources. It needs more of them. And the sources kind of imply, look, if you're even listening to this, thinking about these ideas, you're probably the kind of person who should have financial capacity. Because you're likely to use it well. For good things.
Okay, belief number 3. This one feels so So common, so normal for people to say.
It's incredibly common. I'm just not good with money.
Yeah. You hear people just shrug it off and like, oh, finance, that's never been my strong suit. Or numbers, nah, I'm not a numbers person.
Yeah.
It sounds like a harmless, honest admission of a weakness.
But here's the significant danger, according to the source material. That phrase, I'm not good with money, it quickly hardens. It becomes a label, an identity. And once something becomes part of how you see yourself, part of your identity, your brain stops seeing it as a challenge to overcome. Instead, it starts defending that identity. It looks for evidence to prove it right. It's like if you say, oh, I'm terrible with names. Every time you forget one, your inner voice goes, see? Told you. That's just who I am. And you stop trying as hard. The same thing happens with money. You tell yourself you're bad with it, and suddenly you find yourself avoiding looking at your bank statements. You skim past articles about investing. You feel embarrassed to ask basic financial questions. The sources have a great phrase for this: ignorance disguised as identity. You stay stuck not because you're genuinely incapable, but because you've adopted this label, and the label gives you permission not to learn.
Ignorance disguised as identity. Wow. That is a sharp way to put it.
It is, isn't it? And the sources are really clear on this point. Being bad with money is not an inherent personality trait. It's not like your eye color. It's simply a skill you haven't practiced, or maybe weren't taught. Nobody is born knowing how to budget or save effectively or invest wisely or manage debt. Nobody. These are skills that are learned, and if you weren't taught them growing up, which many of us weren't, it doesn't mean you can't learn them. It just means you haven't had the chance, or maybe haven't taken the chance yet. And the really good news here is that these skills, they are absolutely learnable. You don't need to be a math genius. You don't need a fancy finance degree. The sources suggest starting incredibly small, like track every single dollar you spend for just 1 week, see where it goes, or automate putting just $5 or $10 a day into a separate savings account. Just build the muscle. Read one chapter of a beginner-friendly book on personal finance or investing. Listen to a deep dive like this one. Ask a friend who seems financially organized. Hey, how do you manage your budget? Just ask.
Those tiny steps, they seem almost insignificant on their own, but you're saying they're actually building the foundation.
They are. And more than that, they're actively rewriting that internal script, that negative self-talk. Instead of the old narrative, I'm not good with money, you start to build evidence for a new one, like, okay, I'm learning how to handle money, or I'm becoming the kind of person who builds wealth, or even just acknowledging, I wasn't taught this stuff, but I'm teaching myself now. Whoa, that shifts everything. It's moving from feeling like a victim of your circumstances to taking ownership. The self-made wealthy people the material talks about, they weren't born financial experts. Far from it. Often, they stayed curious. They asked questions, sometimes basic questions that maybe others were too proud or too scared to ask. They definitely made mistakes. Lots of them. But they learned from those mistakes instead of using them as proof that they were fundamentally bad at it. You don't need to be good with money to start getting better. You just need to believe you can be. And then, crucially, take action consistent with that new belief. Even small actions.
That really reframes the whole thing. Okay, belief number 4. This one often carries a lot of maybe resignation or even a bit of bitterness sometimes.
Yeah, you hear it as, rich people just got lucky.
Right. It's easy to look at someone successful and think, well, sure, they were born into money, or they just knew the right people, or maybe they were just in the right place at the right time, that magical timing thing. And look, sometimes it does look like that from the outside, and privilege is definitely a factor for some people, no doubt.
The sources absolutely acknowledge that external factors exist. Privilege is real, connections matter sometimes, timing can help. But they highlight the profound danger of attributing success primarily to luck. Why is that so dangerous? Because if you truly believe deep down that wealth is basically just winning the lottery, it gives you subconscious permission not to even try. I mean, why bother putting in the effort? Why take the risks? Why face the inevitable failures if the whole game is rigged or just purely random? This belief feels safe in a weird way. It protects your ego if you're not where you want to be. It gives you something external to blame. But critically, it gives you zero power, zero agency, and zero pathways for growth or change. What the sources really emphasize is what most people don't see. The behind-the-scenes stuff. Self-made successful people, the ones who started with little, they didn't just stumble into luck. They systematically created more opportunities for potential luck to find them. Does that make sense? They launched multiple projects knowing full well some, maybe most, would fail. They took calculated risks that others shied away from. They faced rejection after rejection in sales and funding and partnerships, and they kept going. They didn't quit. They built networks. They acquired skills when they needed them. They positioned themselves strategically where opportunities were more likely to show up. So what might look like one single lucky break from the outside often has 100 unseen actions, failures, pivots, and learning moments behind it.
That idea, what looks like a lucky moment, usually has 100 unseen actions behind it. That really cuts through the surface, doesn't it?
It really does. It shifts the focus away from passively hoping for good fortune to an active process of engineering success, or at least engineering the conditions for success. It's built piece by piece over time. It requires effort, yes. Patience, definitely. Strategy, resilience. And yes, sometimes good timing helps. But you have to be ready when that timing arrives. You have to have done the work.
So the mindset shift isn't just sitting back and envying someone else's apparent luck. It's getting curious. Instead of thinking, must be nice, it's asking, okay, what can I actually learn from how they got there? What strategies did they use? What patterns can I maybe identify and adapt for my own situation?
Absolutely. The moment you stop blaming an external force like luck, you take your power back, you reclaim your agency, you shift from being just a passive observer of other people's success to being an active participant in creating your own financial future. And that change in perspective, it can genuinely change everything that follows.
Let's move to belief number 5. And again, this one sounds incredibly logical, even responsible maybe, on the surface.
It's the thought, I'll start saving or investing once I earn more.
It feels like a solid plan, right? Okay, once I get that promotion or once I land that new client or once my salary hits X amount, then I'll finally have enough wiggle room. Then I can really start putting serious money away.
And that's the trap. It's such a common trap. The reality, according to the sources, is that if you don't develop the habit of saving and investing at your current income level, whatever it is, you almost certainly won't magically develop it just because your income increases. It really works that way. Why? Because saving and investing, they're fundamentally about mindset and discipline. They're behaviors. They're not purely about the dollar amount you have left over at the end of the month. The material highlights something we've all seen, or maybe even experienced, lifestyle creep. For most people, when income goes up, spending tends to rise right along with it, sometimes even faster. That bigger paycheck suddenly feels like permission for a nicer car, maybe a bigger apartment or house, more frequent dinners out, fancier clothes, more subscriptions. You build a life that's comfortable, sure, at new income level. But often, you end up spending nearly everything you earn again, which leaves you just as financially vulnerable, just as dependent on that single income stream as you were before the raise, just with nicer stuff.
So the core problem wasn't really the amount of money coming in. It was the behavior with the money you already had.
Exactly. That's the key insight. The sources really stress the immense power of starting small, starting right now with whatever you have, even if it feels tiny. The initial goal isn't necessarily the amount you save or invest. That will grow over time. The primary goal right at the beginning is building the habit, forging the identity of someone who prioritizes their future. It's about establishing that financial rhythm, consistently saying, okay, I pay myself first, even if it's just 1%, or I put this small percentage away automatically every payday. I take care of my future self starting today. That discipline, that's the muscle you need to build first. And starting early, even with those small amounts, leverages another incredibly powerful concept the sources talk about: compounding. Compounding is basically your money earning returns, and then those returns starting to earn returns on themselves. It's money making more money. And the magic ingredient for compounding, it's time. The longer your money has to grow, the more powerful compounding becomes. Starting with a little bit now and being consistent is vastly more powerful over the long run than waiting years to start with a larger chunk of money. The most dangerous word the sources identify in personal finance, it's later. Because later too easily drifts into never, and never almost always leads to profound regret down the line.
So the crucial mindset flip here is getting rid of I'll start when I earn more, and replacing it with something like, I build the habit now, so I'm ready when I earn more.
Precisely. That's it, exactly. When that higher income eventually arrives, guess what? You already have the systems in place, you have the discipline, you have the identity of a wealth builder. So the increased income doesn't just vanish into lifestyle creep. It flows into a structure that's already designed to capture it, grow it, and put it to work for you.
That makes so much sense. Okay, which leads us almost directly to belief number 6. This one feels like almost the counterpoint to the last one, in a way. If I just save enough, I'll be rich. It sounds reasonable, like good financial hygiene.
It does, and saving is absolutely critical as that first step. The sources are very clear about that. Building an emergency fund, having that cash cushion for unexpected things, that's foundational. It gives you safety, security, peace of mind. But the hard truth the material delivers next is that simply saving money, just stacking cash in a savings account, that alone will never make you rich. If all your money does is sit there in a standard savings account earning next to nothing, its actual value is shrinking every single day. Why? Inflation. Inflation is like this silent tax that just eats away at your purchasing power over time. Your money looks like the same number in the account. Maybe it goes up a tiny bit with interest, but it buys less tomorrow than it does today, and less the day after that. The sources describe saving as kind of like a short-term parking lot for your money. It's necessary for temporary holding, but it's not the final destination if you want growth.
Okay, so if just saving isn't the path to real wealth, what do the sources say the wealthy actually do with their money?
They move their money, they grow their money, they put their money to work. Instead of just storing it passively, they actively invest it. The sources mention various ways, depending on context and knowledge, of course. Putting money into things like building or scaling businesses. Investing in the stock market, often through things like broad-based index funds or ETFs. Those are like baskets holding lots of different stocks or bonds, so you get diversification. Real estate is another common one. Or even digital assets, for those who understand that space. Education, building a network, those are investments too. The power comes from circulation and growth, not from stagnation. Saving protects you from short-term bumps. Investing is what provides the engine for long-term financial freedom and growth. Think about the simple illustration the sources sometimes use. Imagine two people. They save the exact same amount every month for, say, 30 years. Person A keeps it all in a basic savings account, earning minimal interest, maybe barely keeping up with inflation if they're lucky. Person B invests that same amount consistently, maybe in a diversified portfolio that averages, let's say, an 8% annual return over that long period, which is historically reasonable for broad markets. Over 10 years, the difference between them is noticeable. Over 20 or 30 years, it's staggering. It's potentially the difference between having just a modest nest egg, barely enough to get by in retirement, and building genuine, maybe even generational wealth. So why do people cling to just saving? Well, it feels safe, it feels predictable, comfortable. Investing feels uncertain, maybe complicated, maybe even scary for some. There's risk involved. But the sources argue that comfort doesn't build wealth. Calculated growth does. And growth inherently involves taking some level of informed, calculated risk. Wealthy people, or those building wealth, they educate themselves. They diversify their investments to manage risk. They understand that the greater risk, ironically, is often remaining completely stagnant while inflation silently eats away at their savings year after year.
So the mental shift is moving from saving is the ultimate goal to something more like saving is the necessary first step, my foundation, before I put my money to work. The reframe might be saving is where I build my base. Investing is how I actually grow.
Exactly.
Or maybe I protect my downside with savings, absolutely. But I'm actively focused on building my upside through investing. I don't just store money. I actively seek to multiply it.
Exactly right. Money is a tool. Like any powerful tool, you have to learn how to use it effectively. If you just let it sit there unused, it loses its edge, and you miss out on all its potential power.
Okay, we've covered 6 pretty significant beliefs now. We've dug into why they hold people back and how the sources suggest reframing them. The material also touches on a few more subtle beliefs, maybe less discussed, but still potentially having a big impact on our financial lives. Let's explore those now, maybe a little more quickly, but let's still get to the core of why they matter.
Right. These are maybe the quieter ones, things you might say or think without even realizing the underlying belief driving them. But they reveal patterns.
Okay, belief number 7. I don't need to be rich. I just want to be comfortable. That sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? Almost humble. Like you're not being greedy.
It does sound reasonable. And look, wanting comfort isn't inherently wrong. We all want some level of comfort. But the sources point out a potential dark side to aiming only for comfort. Comfort, as typically defined financially, is often a fragile state. It usually means living just inside your means. You can cover your bills, maybe have a little extra for fun now and then, but there's not much buffer for the unexpected. What happens when a real challenge hits? A job loss, a significant medical issue, a major home or car repair. That kind of comfort can shatter really quickly. The sources sometimes describe it like stability built on fine china. It looks nice, but it breaks easily. So the material suggests aiming not just for mere comfort, which is limited and fragile, but for something more like abundance, or maybe financial resilience. Abundance gives you space to breathe. It gives you choices. It gives you the capacity to handle those inevitable life surprises without it completely derailing your life or causing panic. It allows you to be generous, maybe, without limitation, or pursue opportunities without fear. It's not necessarily about aiming for over-the-top luxury just for ego. It's about building robust security, real freedom, the freedom to act on your values fully.
That's a really powerful distinction. Fragile comfort versus robust security and freedom. Okay, number 8 is next. I'll never be able to afford that. This feels like such a casual throwaway comment sometimes.
And that's exactly why it's dangerous, according to the sources. Because it's often said so casually, saying, I can't afford that, or, oh, that's not for people like me. It often just shuts down the conversation, inside your own brain, before it even starts. You stop asking questions. You stop looking for possibilities or pathways. You just accept it as impossible. Wealthy thinkers, or those cultivating that mindset the material suggests, they don't look at something seemingly unaffordable and just accept it as a final verdict. They tend to see it more as a challenge, or maybe a future goal, or just a problem that needs solving. Their internal dialogue isn't simply, nope, can't afford that. It's more like, okay, how could I afford that? Or what would I need to do differently? What would need to happen to make that possible someday? They don't automatically shrink the dream to fit their current reality. They look for ways to expand their reality, their methods, their thinking, to eventually reach the dream.
It really sounds like the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, but applies specifically to finances.
Exactly. It's about staying curious, staying resourceful, not shutting down possibility.
Okay, belief number 9. Money changes people. This often comes up as a fear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
People worry about becoming someone they don't like.
It does come up as a fear, and it's usually based on observing people whose personalities seem to shift, often negatively, when they gain wealth. We've all seen examples. But the sources offer a clearer, maybe more nuanced perspective here. Money doesn't fundamentally change who you are at your core. It tends to reveal and amplify who you already were. Think about it. If someone was secretly arrogant or self-centered or maybe had questionable values before they had money, wealth often just gives them more resources and maybe fewer social filters to express those underlying traits more openly. Conversely, if someone was genuinely generous, kind, grounded, and had strong integrity before wealth, they tend to become even more so with resources, just with a larger capacity to express those positive qualities. The danger of believing money changes people is that it can create this subtle fear of success. A subconscious thought like, uh-oh, if I actually get rich, will I lose myself? Will my friends still like me? Will I become awful? And that fear, even if unconscious, can absolutely lead to self-sabotage, keeping yourself small to stay safe. The counter to this, the sources suggest, is to focus on building a strong character, clear values, and self-awareness right now, regardless of your income level. The implication is, if you build a solid, authentic, values-driven version of yourself today, you'll be equipped to handle abundance with integrity tomorrow. You'll use it to express your best self, not your worst.
So the focus shouldn't be on fearing the money, but on becoming the kind of person who can handle it well, independent of the bank balance.
Precisely. Build the person you want to be, first and foremost. And that person will know how to handle wealth responsibly and ethically when it arrives.
And finally, belief number 10. This one feels particularly sad to hear people say. I'm too late to start.
It is sad, isn't it? Because it's a belief that actively steals your future. It robs you of potential. It whispers things like, oh, I should have learned about investing back in my 20s, or I'm too old now to start a business, or look at everyone else. They're already miles ahead. What's the point now? But the powerful truth the sources offer here is simple and incredibly liberating. It's only truly too late when you're no longer alive, period. Until that day comes, every single day you wake up is still a potential day one, a potential starting line. The sources often include inspiring examples, right? People who started significant wealth-building journeys or learned completely new skills or launched successful ventures much later in life, in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, even beyond. It happens all the time. Look, time can feel like an enemy if you use "I don't have enough time left" as an excuse to delay action. But if you choose to act today, time immediately becomes your greatest asset again. Why? Because even starting today gives you the benefit of compounding returns, however small initially. It allows for skill acquisition over time. It builds momentum that starting tomorrow or next year simply doesn't offer. The most important factor isn't the exact age you begin your journey. It's simply that you begin now.
That really hits home. Okay, just to quickly recap those last 4 subtle but powerful beliefs. Don't mistake fragile comfort for real freedom and security. Ask, how can I?
instead of automatically saying, I can't afford that. Understand that money tends to amplify who you already are rather than fundamentally changing you. So focus on becoming a good person. And critically, maybe most importantly for some, you are never, ever too late to start building a better financial future.
Absolutely. These are all essentially deeply embedded operating systems running in our minds. And just recognizing them, bringing them out into the light like we're doing now, that's the absolutely crucial first step to rewriting them.
So we've taken this deep dive into the sources, exploring these 10 common beliefs. Beliefs that, according to the material, are significant factors, maybe the primary factors for some, in keeping people financially stuck. It really boils down to questioning that unconscious script, the one that's maybe been running in your head for years or even decades.
And the core message that's reinforced throughout this material, particularly in those concepts described within the Grow Leap Academy framework, it's incredibly consistent. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your mindset about money, they directly shape your financial results. Not always instantly, maybe not overnight, but with remarkable consistency over time. What you truly believe is possible for you. That dictates the actions you're willing to take. It dictates the risks you'll even consider. It dictates the opportunities you even notice in the first place. And look, this deep dive, this discussion, it isn't necessarily suggesting that everyone listening must become a millionaire. That's just one potential outcome, and maybe not everyone's goal. The true value, as it's presented in the sources, seems to be about taking back control. Control of your financial trajectory, yes, but also, maybe more importantly, control over your time, your energy, your choices, your future. It's about shifting from living on autopilot driven by old, limiting beliefs to consciously living from intention, making deliberate choices based on new possibilities. When you start actively challenging these old assumptions, when you start consciously adopting some of the reframes we've talked about, you genuinely start to see the world differently. It's like putting on new glasses. You begin to spot opportunities where before you only saw limitations or roadblocks. You move from thinking, oh, can I even do this? To asking, okay, how could I potentially do this? What would be the first step? The sources suggest that this fundamental shift in perspective is the essence of millionaire thinking or wealth builder thinking. And the amazing thing is you don't need the money in the bank first to begin thinking that way. You start with the thinking.
It sounds like it requires a few key ingredients then. Things like clarity, really knowing what you want. Taking fierce responsibility, owning your current situation and your power to change your future. Maintaining curiosity, always being willing to learn, to ask questions, to find solutions. And cultivating that deep core belief that wherever you are right now, that's simply the starting line. It's not the ceiling. It's not your predetermined destiny.
Exactly. That sums it up really well. As the sources sometimes quote something like, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your mindset. So the real work, the fundamental task, if you want different results, it's building that inner foundation, strengthening that mindset, thought by thought, habit by habit, day by day. This isn't about chasing some overnight success gimmick. It's about committing to long-term financial ownership and empowerment. And the material makes a really compelling case, I think. That willingness to look inward, to honestly examine and challenge these deeply held beliefs, that's the most powerful leverage point you have. Do that inner work consistently, and the outer results, including what shows up in your bank account, will inevitably start to change and align with that new mindset.
That's a really powerful synthesis of these ideas. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, here's maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to sit with. Thinking about the 10 beliefs we've explored today. Let me list them again quickly. I just need to work harder. Money is the root of all evil. I'm just not good with money. Rich people just got lucky. I'll start saving or investing once I earn more. If I just save enough, I'll be rich. I just want to be comfortable. I'll never be able to afford that. Money changes people, and I'm too late to start. Which single belief, just one, resonated most strongly with you? Which one felt like, ouch, yeah, that might be something holding me back right now?
And once you've maybe identified that one belief that feels most relevant to you, what is one small, concrete, actionable step you can take today, like literally within the next 24 hours, something small, to begin actively challenging that specific belief? Just one thing.
Remember that point we just made about it never being too late. Time is still your greatest asset, but only if you choose to start using it now. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We explored the source material connecting our beliefs about money to our financial reality, referencing that framework outlined as Grow Leap Academy. If something in this conversation clicked for you, maybe resonated, consider sharing this dive with someone else in your life, someone who might also benefit from examining their own assumptions about money and wealth. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep building those new habits.
As the sources seem to suggest, your next level, whether that's financial freedom, more control, more abundance, whatever it means to you, it isn't some distant destination you're just waiting to arrive at. It's actually available to you right now. It's already here, waiting. It just needs you to show up, to act with the mindset and the belief that it's possible for you. So keep growing, keep building, and maybe, just maybe, take the leap.